It can't get bigger than this. On your screen is the 15th world champion, Vishy Anand, and taking him on is the 16th world champion, Magnus Carlsen. There you have the handshake. Magnus Carlsen representing the Alpine SG Pipers and Vishy Anand playing for the Ganges Grandmasters. And there we have the guest who's going to make the first move. Magnus tells her what the first move is going to be and adjusts all his pieces. Vishy and Magnus did play earlier in this tournament. It was a draw between them, and now it's a very important game for the Alpine SG Pipers if they want to get in top 2 spots. Let's see how this goes. Magnus keeps the pawn on the board and presses the clock. Vishy responds back with the symmetrical English. The knight comes out, and now knight to c3 played here. Magnus playing the English is more of a statement that I want to get a playable position which can go on for a long time. That is Magnus's intention here. Vishy pushes his pawn to e6, opening up his bishop here. Magnus takes the center with his pawn, and now the bishop comes in, pinning the knight, attacking the pawn here, and Magnus chops off the knight. Vishy has a choice between taking here and with the b pawn. Taking with the b pawn makes much more sense. Closer to the center, the bishop comes in, defends the pawn, and taking control of the central square here with e5. Now Magnus castles it out, and Vishy also castles here. This is all well known opening theory, and in this position Magnus knows h3 is a useful move. It stops knight g4 later, but Vishy chops off the knight, and Magnus's structure now isn't the best here. You can see doubled pawns. d6 is played, and he has to decide whether to put the bishop here. Black would generally then push his pawn forward. So Magnus says, take it, Vishy. I'm giving you the pawn. A very interesting pawn sacrifice. And after taking here, he has now kind of doubled Black's pawns and opening up the position for his bishops. Vishy is not one to take it down passively. He gives back the pawn. Magnus retreats. If he would have taken, then the queen trade and the e4 pawn would be hanging. So bishop drops back, queen takes queen, rook takes, and we have a very interesting imbalance here. White has the bishop pair, but black is a pawn up, and Magnus takes it. You can see this bishop, dark squared bishop. The unopposed bishop is looking at these squares. Bishop comes here, defends the pawn. It's a very interesting one here with a very small edge for Magnus because his bishop and rook are controlling this square. h6 played by Vishy here, and Magnus tries to gain space on the queen side. He would like to push his pawn even further, but Vishy stops it right in its tracks with a5. It's not easy to play such positions against Magnus, but Vishy is good at defense here. Rook comes to the 7th rank. Knight joins in. Now knight h5. Bishop d6 seems like a natural move here, but Magnus comes back. Maybe he wants to go via c5. And g5 played. The knight is making a square for itself on the f4 square. King comes up, and now Vishy comes in with his knight. The knight is well placed. It can't be kicked away. The pawn is hanging. So Magnus gives up his bishop. He will get back the pawn now, but in return he has lost his bishop pair. And Vishy very quick to neutralize the position. He wants his rook to enter in there. So Magnus brings the rook back. He's like, my rooks are not going to allow your rooks to come in. And slowly my king will try to enter here. So Vishy plays rook b8. A good move, tried to enter here. King takes pawn, and the rook comes down to the 7th rank. Excellent play by Vishy Anand here. He's managed to put Magnus under pressure with his active rook. And look at that, Magnus has to defend passively. But what he's banking on is his king to become active. But there you have Vishy's king coming in. When Magnus's king comes here, he's going to block it with his own king. And that's exactly what he does. Now Magnus comes backwards. He wants to come here. His king would be well positioned, and Vishy moves in as well, stopping that pawn push. And I would love to put my king here, but Vishy goes to e7. Is it the best move? Not so sure. But Vishy did want to provoke the pawn coming forward so that he can place his bishop, just defending everything here, and that is what he has done. Now look at Magnus. He's trying to create a passer here, but Vishy very quick to bring his king. That's the reason why he had his king here. And now Magnus's king enters. This is getting strategically so exciting, this game. Will Magnus be able to create some kind of play on the king side? Look at that. He's moving his king even further in. King d6. And look, the rook is now attacking the pawn and the bishop both. g5. Fantastic chess by Magnus. It dawns on me now that actually Magnus all throughout understood that he will give up this pawn and use his e-pawn to rush down the board. His understanding here is just so good. Rook a3 played to attack the pawn. The best move is bishop b1, taking control of the a2 square, but bishop f5 also very good, very strong. Rook takes a4, and now g6, powerful blow there in the position. As we discussed, it's not the quantity, it's the quality of the pawns that matters, and here Magnus Carlsen's pawn here is just worth its weight in gold. Rook g1 attacking the pawn, and Vishy Anand cannot find a way to coordinate his pieces together. They all look beautiful. The a pawn is there, he's attacking here. He's hoping that Magnus gives up this pawn where he can give up the bishop and chop off the last pawn. But Magnus is not one to give this up so easily. He takes the pawn with the check. Vishy moves his king to f7. Another check here. King goes back to g7. And now he plays king e7. In fact, the four white pieces are coming up on the king. Rook b3 important to give a check here. And now check to the black king. King has to move into the corner. And how is Magnus going to finish this off? He's absolutely amazing. There's a reason why he's called the endgame god. And this is where he is showing it. He pushes his pawn and he's saying to Vishy, take it if you want to, because I have a mating net here. King f6, now threatening e7, e8. Anand's pawn is pushing forward, but check, king g8, and now the bishop checks in. If you go king f8, I have e7 check, so he comes back. Another check here, king g8, and bishop f7, king f8, rook h8 bait, and Vishy Anand resigns there. What an endgame by Magnus Carlsen. I would say he just saw it from beforehand that his kingside pawns would rush down the board, creating an e-passer. It's like even before the painting had begun, Magnus could see the finish there, and that is why he's known as one of the finest endgame players. Vishy Anand tried to defend in the best possible way he could, but Magnus was just too strong there, and he managed to beat Vishy. With this, the Alpine SG Pipers managed to score a big win over the Ganges Grandmasters, which was an important one because then now they've moved into the second position on the leaderboard just behind PBG Alaskan Knights and have a big chance to finish in top 2 to enter the finals. This game by Magnus Carlsen was nice, and I love how both these world champions, former world champions, are discussing with each other. Vishy has 64 on his back, Magnus has 1 on his back. It's like somehow these both numbers make so much sense. Magnus sets all the pieces there, and that was an amazing encounter.